With 2 weeks left before the midterms start on November 6th, I would like to highlight one key race for the House of Representatives that seems to be going fairly unnoticed nationwide, but locally is an important issue and could actually be very important when it comes to taking back the House for the Democrats and showing how you can do it in the future in many rural red state districts. And this would be the second district in Maine, which, as we know, is my home state. Not just this won't just be biased about Maine, though. I can explain how this will affect other districts, but this is quite the important issue for Maine. As first off, this is a fairly swing district right now that's put up in most polls as a swing state, and in the past two polls, actually, both these candidates have been at a literal tie with no one in favor. So the two candidates are incumbent Bruce Poliquin for the Republicans, being challenged by a young 36-year-old Jared Golden from the Democrats. Now, Jared Golden, this is why you should care. Jared Golden, he is not a corporate Democrat like many others, such as the one in the first district of Maine, Shelley Pingree, who is fairly corrupt and follows a style more like Hillary Clinton and those centrist corporate Democrats, or even Dianne Feinstein, for you Californians out there. But Jared Golden's fairly progressive. He's talked about Medicare for all, a Green Deal, like a Green New Deal, and many of these other various things that are fairly progressive, even trade deals. He agrees with Trump on the idea of pushing more tariffs for other countries, and this is obviously because in Maine's second district, there's a fair amount of production that happens in there. It's a more rural place, a bunch of trees, not really many big towns. There aren't really any big towns in second district of Maine, and so a lot of it does come from paper mills. Specifically paper mills. There's some lobster going on the coast, and those things could heavily affect Maine's economy if there were tariffs put in place into Maine. That could help them out. So that's why Jared Golden supports them. But Bruce Poliquin, to get a sense of the type of Republican he is, he's taken over $50,000 from the private insurance industry, and as a result, he's pushed for certain things like removing protections for pre-existing conditions, which is quite bad, especially in Maine when our governor, Paul LePage, who's this very Tea Party, he was the remnants from the 2010-2011 Tea Party movement and that radical right-wing movement. He vetoed the push for Medicare expansion into the states when Obama famously made it during the Obamacare Act and the Affordable Care Act, and the Supreme Court ruled that it was up to the states to decide whether they could take the Medicare expansion, and then Paul LePage famously vetoed it like so many times for the state of Maine, even though the local government, like the local House and Congress in Maine, pushed for it so many times and voted for it so many times. So that's the type of Republican he is. He's not as far extreme as LePage. It's more of him just being a corporate, one of those standard corporate Republicans who doesn't want that. And he also voted to remove Obamacare many times. So the reason why he is mainly tied to the business side is because Bruce Poliquin himself is a businessman. He's not like Trump when he comes out and just says ridiculous things. He's more of those tactical Republicans or those more corporate centrist Republicans. So he can't be attacked for that per se, but there are many issues that you can attack him on, and Jared Golden's been doing just that in Maine, especially with the fact that many people do want this Medicare expansion in the state of Maine, and Jared Golden's been pushing for flat-out universal health care. That's a sign of victory. So this is a fairly similar race to something that I know many progressives have been talking about in the areas of like West Virginia. Like West Virginia 3, I believe, is the one district that is contested right now by the Democrats, and that's the plus 49 for Trump. When he ran, he got plus 49 over Hillary Clinton in that. One of the most conservative districts in the country is being held fairly close by this popular progressive Richard Ojeda. And I'll get to some similarities between them in the second. Now, Golden isn't flat out, uh, how do I say, brazen as Ojeda. Like, he's not very flat out more realistic, or it's the, I guess you could say more like the average Joe. He doesn't go around like Ojeda giving out his phone number, but he's still fairly relatable, and they're both fairly progressive guys who care for their country and don't take any corporate PAC money. That's another thing about Jared Golden. He doesn't take any corporate PAC money, which is very nice if we want to get the progressive wave going. And Maine, the second district of Maine is kind of similar in this case because as we can look right here on this map, this is 270 to win, this official map. So we look at the current places for New England. This is Maine 02 right here, the large swath of Maine. It's the last district in New England that is controlled by a Republican congressman. You can see New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire all have Democrats controlling their Congress and House of Representatives. So Maine is the only district, and if that were to be taken back by a progressive of all things, a real deal progressive, that would be a huge victory for the Democrats, and that's why it's a fairly important race. But more than that, there was an interesting debate that happened the other day between Poliquin and Jared Golden. So Poliquin, he seemed fairly scared and attacked him using some very stupid buzzwords, such as saying young radical socialist many times and just using those as arguments, and using the terms young, that's honestly a disadvantage. Being young is really a good thing, especially now that millennials are getting out to vote and they're the more progressive generation. And being young means you're usually more relatable and in touch with the population. So the fact that a 64-year-old is questioning him on his age, that's quite a dumb move. And calling someone just a socialist, even when we look at his official description for healthcare, he says we can start by improving the Affordable Care Act, and then from there we need to move towards universal healthcare system. He's not flat out calling for a fast removal of the Affordable Care Act into a Medicare for All system. And on many of these other issues, he's not completely 100% progressive. So it's not a completely solid Bernie Sanders style, maybe more like Elizabeth Warren, the almost Bernie progressive, which is still a fairly good thing for Maine, but he's not even that radical. And Bernie Sanders is not even that radical. He's just populist and very what people want oriented. He's more in touch with the people. So unless Bruce Poliquin wants to go around calling the average American citizen or the average Mainer a radical, then that would bite him quite hard in the butt. So the final thing is the most funny thing, and the similarity between Ojeda and the West Virginia district is that Bruce Poliquin attacked Jared Golden, as many Republicans do. They attacked him for being un-American, when, to probably not to Bruce Poliquin's knowledge, is that Jared Golden in 2001 he left college to go join the military after the September 11 attacks and served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. So when you're attacking someone for being un-American and unpatriotic, when they're a military veteran, they're a veteran in the military, that is going to backfire so hard on you that you might as well just cower out right there. And that is another thing that's the main comparison between Ojeda and Golden, is that they're both from the military, and that can be considered kryptonite to the Republicans, who are not Superman. They're definitely not Superman. They're more of a Lex Luthor. Bruce Poliquin actually, hold on. Maybe not that one. Yeah, if Bruce Balcom was bald, he looked like a fairly similar to Lex Luthor actually. So you could consider the reverse there, because he's going to be the Lex Luthor there. But points aside, for anyone who's watching this in the second district of Maine, please vote Jared Golden if you care about your future and care for the future of this country and want money out of politics. That's another thing, actually, before I go. Jared Golden is endorsed by End Citizens United and has clearly stated, let me just find it. He's got a campaign signex. I believe the key to true campaign finance reform lies in ending Citizens United, and I have taken no corporate PAC money pledge. So he is the real deal when it comes to caring for the average Mainer who's in these towns like Bangor, Lewiston, Auburn, even Aroostook, and the Scottsdale counties. So that just shows you he is the real deal and cares for Americans and doesn't take any money from private interests like Bruce Paulquin. So please go out on November 6th and vote for Jared Golden if you're from the 2nd District of Maine.